The Audi S3 gets a refresh for the 2025 model year, and in this video I'll cover the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. And so as far as the front end of the S3, well, a lot of big changes here. You have some new lights that here on this Prestige trim, the top trim, you get some welcome animations. All S3s though get a new front grille and a new front bumper that also look really nice and nicely amped up in my opinion, a little more aggressive than before. Although surprisingly, they've decided on all of these sporty Audi models to get rid of the badging on the front. So there is no sign that this is an S3 over an A3 unless you're an Audi aficionado. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the back end and see the S3 badge there and know what you're looking at here. But, you know, kind of strange to not advertise what this vehicle is. I mean, I appreciate the subtlety in these days of everything being so over the top and so in your face with badging, but you know, just I'd still like to see that little S3 badge they used to have. Anyway though, you also see that they do definitely have a very pronounced Audi badge there, and it really kind of juts out whenever you look at it from the rear, and it's even illuminated here, both on the front and on the back. And then coming down to the sides here, this one has these very cool 19-inch wheels that show off these red brakes behind it, which is part of the sport package this one has. This one is also on winter tires, so it's going to be a little more fun here in the middle of May, and should make this car feel even a little looser than it will naturally. And then going out to the back end of the S3, you get some new tail lights there, as well as a new rear diffuser and a new rear bumper that's more aggressive once again, and I think really again amps up the look of this vehicle nicely for these sporty versions. And you have the very nice large quad exhaust tips there as well, and overall I think it's just a really nice look out in the back as well. And especially here in this gray color, it's very subtle, but there are a lot of really fun bright colors available for these now as well, which is really great to see. The interior of the 2025 S3 gets a few little changes, nothing huge, but the main ones are that we have a new shifter area here. You also now have this cool perforation on the door panels, and ambient lighting actually shines through that. You can customize the look of that, and that's a really cool new little touch to make this feel a little more modern and high-tech. And you also have this new Sonos stereo here. Now, they didn't detail the changes between this and the Bang & Olufsen stereo they had before in these. It still has a 3D surround sound kind of effect and has all the same menus here in Audi's infotainment system. So you know, it sounds very good. I have no complaints with it whatsoever. I'm not sure why they changed, but you know, this is a really good stereo. To me, it doesn't feel like it's any kind of downgrade from my last experience in an S3, and still really top-notch sound quality here, great 3D effects and all that. But otherwise, as far as the other main things here for the S3, there are a couple of things that I wish they had improved for 2025 that they haven't. So first off, sitting down in these seats, you still have the beautiful quilted seats with the contrast stitching that Audi always does. They are just as nice looking as they were before, but they continue to be only heated. They are not ventilated, and this is just inexcusable because, again, Golf R gives you ventilated seats. That's the lower one. Why does the lower one have more stuff than the nicer Audi? I know Audi, for some reason, whenever you introduce quilting, they for some reason are not able to include ventilation as well. I don't know why those two things are mutually exclusive, because other companies do combine ventilation and quilting. But for some reason, you know, there's no way to get cooled seats in these, so you're stuck with just heated seats. But moving on to the steering wheel here, that is a really fantastic wheel. Hasn't changed, and I still love how simple it is, and the fact that we have cruise control controls on a stock that's separate really makes this one of the cleanest wheels in the industry, and I'm still very much appreciating them. It all works all the same here as far as the button controls, and the gauge cluster is all the same as well here. So if you're familiar with these from the past several years, you know, it's been the same for a while now. It's still fantastic though. I have zero complaints with it. You know, it has some fun, you know, little different displays you can pick from and stuff. It would be fun to see a little more customization as far as, you know, the look of the gauges and stuff, but it's still completely fine. And if you go to the RS3, you do get some more customization there with that. You also get a head-up display here in this top Prestige trim. But coming over to the middle here, again, we still continue to have this Audi MMI touchscreen that I believe is about a 10-inch display. It's, you know, been around for a couple of years. Still works really great though. Still has wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, Nice and simple as far as the menus. It does have like an Android or Google built-in kind of thing going now. So you have a few different things. There's also themes now you can buy, and Alexa's built in. You know, there's a little bit more there, but thankfully all the core goodness and the simplicity of it is still there. So you can just ignore all the new stuff if you want and still have all the same great functionality you've always had. And then coming down, just basic climate controls here still. You do have this really nice and deep cubby, really large for a small little vehicle like this. So you can fit a huge smartphone in there on this wireless charging pad, as well as you see your 2 USB-C jacks in there. There's also your usual small little Audi cup holders, pockets in the doors, and also this small little center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. You open that up and you have just barely enough space for sunglasses, and that's about it. But, you know, nice to have nonetheless. And, you know, of course, this is a very small car, so you are going to be space constrained. Backseat, though, is actually better than you might be expecting for a vehicle like this. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I still have a couple inches of legroom to spare back there, and also a couple inches of headroom thanks to the cutouts you have in the roof there. So they really did a good job of maximizing it, you know, dishing out the seats here and everything to really give you as much space as possible. And you also will see they have a little simple climate control, their own air vents, USB-C jacks. Now those rear seats are not heated. That is something else the Golf R also gives you, and you still don't have that here in this. Now, I don't think you need heated rear seats in a Golf R either, but it's just, again, the hierarchy here and the fact that, you know, the Volkswagen gets more stuff than this does just still doesn't sit well with me. But anyway, you fold down the center armrest, you have cup holders and a nice padding there for that. And then moving on to the trunk, nothing has changed there really. You know, it's still a good amount of space. You still have no spare under the floor, but, you know, a little bit of extra little cubbies there. Now, the one new thing here is that it's now a kick-to-open trunk, which I can understand on a family crossover. I don't really see the need for it here in this. And the thing that's annoying about it, at least in my experience, is that whenever I was at the car wash, power spraying this vehicle, power washing it off, that's where, if you have the key in your pocket, it's very easily confused. And so me just spraying the trunk area was like, oh, that must be a foot under the rear bumper somehow. And it popped the trunk on me, I think 3 times. And I had to hurry up and slam it before I got all my stuff wet in the trunk. And Volkswagen's sensors for the kick sensors are just not great. I also saw the same thing in the ID Buzz, where that one kept wanting to open the side doors because they're kicked open, and I was just trying to wash the car. So whenever you're washing any of these new Volkswagen or Audi vehicles with kick sensors, make sure your key is far away if you don't want to have accidental trunk or door openings happening. But, you know, still a good amount of space here. I still wish we'd get the hatch version of the S3 here, especially since we don't get any kind of SQ3 or any kind of RSQ3. You know, it'd be nice to see a sporty hatchback to give you a little bit of practicality. But again, if you want that, you go up to the Golf R. But anyway, let's start up and go for a drive. The S3 just continues to use Audi's wonderfully small, simple little key here. And really nice and attractive. I mean, there's a little bit of plastic, but also some metal on it. And I just love how small it is. One of the smallest keys in the industry, and it's so refreshing, especially if you are someone who keeps your keys in your pocket. But anyway, it is, of course, keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2025 Audi S3. So the first thing you notice, well, I think the first thing I'm noticing is, of course, you still have the great visibility here of the S3. It's pretty thin A-pillar, and you know, for a small car like this, you have a pretty good view out of the back as well, and just very easy, obviously, of course, very easy to park, very easy to maneuver. You also do have park sensors, although you don't have any kind of 360 camera, even on this top Prestige. You just have a backup camera, and that's it. Other things here that I'm noticing. So I'm actually really appreciating the more responsive throttle. So this engine's been retuned, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but they say that now they pre-spool the turbo a little bit just so it's a little more responsive so you don't catch the engine off guard. But I think also they must have retuned these transmission. It is faster now for manual shifts whenever you're doing full throttle manual shifts, but it seems like it isn't tuned to hypermile as much as it used to want to do that. It used to be more annoying in the Golf R than the S3 in my opinion, but it also tried to do it in the, you know, my past review of an S3, but now it's a lot more responsive, even in comfort mode here. And that's what I was hoping for, is the comfort mode wouldn't be a complete bore to drive in, you know, so you didn't have to always drive this in sport mode or manual mode. And thankfully now comfort mode is actually a usable mode if you actually, you know, still want decent response, which is great. And so they also retuned the steering. It does seem a little lighter, I think, in the normal comfort mode here. We will see, you know, how it feels once we're going into the dynamic mode, but let's go ahead and pop it up into that dynamic mode. There's also an individual mode you can always go into as well, but there's also a new dynamic plus mode here. So we're going to turn that on. That turns off your stability control here, or puts it into a sport mode, and gets everything to its sportiest setting here. And the roads have just been rained on, so a little wet, but we're going to turn down onto this back road here, see how it accelerates. Here we go. Man, it sounds great. It has a little bit more of a muscular sound, I think, than it had in the past too. And yeah, this thing, it really gets up and goes nicely. So we have a revised version of the same 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder these have had for a long time, but now it does an extra 22 horsepower, 328 horsepower total. 295 pound-feet of torque is unchanged as far as that peak value, but it's now available through a wider range of the rev band there. So, you know, more torque in more areas. So it is an actual improvement, even though on paper it doesn't look like it is. And 0 to 60 time, I believe Car and Driver previously got like a 4.4 seconds 0 to 60. This, you know, should be able to get even closer to 4 seconds flat. Maybe it'll even hit that or exceed that. We'll have to see. And I always love how savage this is. I thought I heard a little crackle and pop there, but it's always like hit or miss with these. Sometimes it does it, other times it doesn't. It doesn't seem like it's super consistent, or I'm just not used to this car enough to predict exactly when it's going to do it, but it is fun to get those every once in a while. I'd honestly like them even more and just have it like all the time, every time you lift off in the dynamic plus mode here. But let me try out some manual shifts here. So they do say that up shifts, and when you're going full throttle, should be quicker by 50%. So we will try that out and see here. And here we go. I like the little turbo whooshy sounds you're getting here as well. That's something fun I don't remember from before. But yeah, I mean, it's nice and quick. I didn't have any complaints, honestly. It's the 7-speed dual clutch automatic. I haven't had any complaints with it at all. It's smooth. Whenever you're inching up, it's really well behaved, you know, around town, but it also was always quick enough that I, again, never had any complaints with it, but certainly continues to be really good. Okay, I think I got a little bit of a burble and crackle there. I wish you'd be able to hear more of that. Maybe we will try just cracking the window here a little. See if we can get any of that with some more outside noise here. Yeah, no luck. Sounds good though still, even more of that intake noise when you get the window down. But anyway, so yeah, that's you know, one of the biggest changes here. But the other thing is that, you know, it still goes through an all-wheel drive system, but it now goes to the same torque vectoring rear diff as the RS3, and so that should make this a little bit of a sportier handler. And we're gonna try that out here in just a minute once we go on some tighter roads. But you know, we also here on this one have the S Sport package, which gives you not only adaptive dampers, but also allows you to adjust them and make them adjustable here through the screen. And so they're in their firmest setting now, and you know, you do feel every little groove, and it does feel a little stiff, not uncomfortably so, but just very communicative. Some people will love that. For my limited driving I did in comfort mode, that was also very comfortable and actually really well behaved. And I always thought the S3 did a really good job of really balancing both of, you know, being a nice little just daily driver when you just need it to be chill, and then, you know, being able to nicely amp up the aggression and the fun there whenever you want that as well. But this thing does handle really, really well though. Now, like I said earlier, my impressions of the handling are going to be limited by the fact that even though we're in the middle of May, this was sent to me, unfortunately, on winter tires. We have some Pirelli winter tires, 235 wide on this, so it's going to be a little looser. You will have more grip in any other setup that you run on these. Basically, as long as it's not a winter setup, you know, you will have more grip than what I will demonstrate here in just a minute. But you know, it's still, obviously, even around normal corners and stuff, still handles very flatly. That's the thing that, you know, regardless of tires, you appreciate, is that flatness, the poise. And again, even though we might have a squishier response with these tires, you know, just still really nice and sharp steering. But that steering has been retuned. I'd have to drive these back to back to truly say, because nothing jumps out at me as being immediately apparent is like, wow, this is a huge change. But and even half throttle upshifts are still nice and quick. I love, yeah, the manual shifting in these has always been so well done, and it's actually fun to use if you are someone who, you know, misses the control of a manual. You know, you can use these pedals all the time, and they're always going to feel really good to use here. Now I'm going to go ahead and just put it back into the automatic mode, let it do its own thing here. And, you know, this road disc usually generates some more road noise, and in this, you know, you hear a little bit of it. It's still a small car, and they try to keep the weight down. It's only about 3,600 pounds here, I believe, even with the addition of that rear diff. But coming up some corners here, I always take it. Let's see how it does on winter tires here. All right, so I hear a little bit of complaint from the tires, but it's doing a really good job here. And yeah, so flat and just so fun. It's so tossable since it's so small. All right, I felt the back end get a little you know, more active there. Now again, the tires might be doing some of that, but you know, I obviously marveled at the RS3. If you saw my video on that a couple of years ago, one of my favorite cars ever under 100 grand. I love the RS3. And so having that rear diff here in this is great, even though we don't have the zany tire setup you have in the RS3s, where you have actually skinnier rear tires than front tires on that vehicle, which is so fun, and the only vehicle I think in the industry that does that, and just gave that so much fun. We don't have that here. It's a square setup, but you know, it should still give us a lot of that same fun. But I'm going to quickly do a launch here. Launch control active, it says, and yeah, that's fun. Nice and quick. You know, it doesn't rip your head off though. It's not like some other launches which really feel like they're like dumping the clutch on you here. You know, it's just nice and smooth, and off and away you go. But it's nice that it's so easy to do too. As long as you're in Dynamic Plus, you just mash both pedals and you're off and away. So yeah, lots of fun here. Obviously, if you want more fun and more craziness, you're going to want to go for that RS3, which honestly isn't a large upcharge. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But as fun as the S3 is here, you know, RS3 may be the more appealing one for sure, as long as you're okay dealing with, you know, the more extroverted nature of, you know, the wider fenders and, you know, the 5-cylinder engine of that one. Yeah, I do think maybe it's just my memories fogging, but I feel like they have amped up the aggression on this exhaust, which I'm very happy about. But now we're charging back up this hill, so this torque vector rear diff can work its magic and work a little harder here. And the roads are dry now, so we'll see how it puts the power down here on these winter tires. So we also have some bigger brakes, just dabbing on those here. 14.1 inch rotors in the front. Wow, so neutral. It really did a nice job rotating there. And then they are, I believe, 12.2 inch rotors in the rear, but there are 2 piston calipers there in the front. They're red here for this S Sport package as well. And so nice, you get a little bit of extra braking power to go with a little bit of extra horsepower that you have. All right, you know, lean on these brakes again here. Really nice and responsive and confidence inspiring with those brakes. But yeah, wow, it's really nice the way this handles. I really enjoy it a lot. And it is different than the RS3 because, again, it's just a little more of a traditional kind of setup, not quite as tail happy as the RS3, but last corner that often provokes understeer. And I got a little bit of understeer there just because I think the tires, I could hear them moaning there. But yeah, I'm very happy with the handling, and again, with regular, even all seasons, this, I'm sure it'd be even miles better. But it's still a fun thing no matter what tires are on it here, and yeah, such good handling, and happy to report, you know, I didn't have any complaints, honestly, with S3s before as far as the handling, but that, you know, rear diff does make it a little more active in the back there, and certainly does a great job of, you know, just making this vehicle even better on a back road than it was before. But now we're on a main road here, so I'm going to go ahead and just put it back up into the comfort setting here, if it'll respond. There we go. Took a couple of taps there on the button, but then, you know, exhaust quiets down, and everything just gets nice and chill. And it's also great to have that individual mode. So for example, if you want to have, super loud exhaust, super sporty, whatever, sporty suspension, you can, customize everything there and make it exactly the way you want. And so great to give you that adjustability as well. And now we're out on the highway here in the S3, and the Prestige version of these comes with more driver assistance technology than you get on a regular S3. Now all S3s are going to get blind spot monitoring, route cross traffic alert, of course automatic emergency braking and all the basic stuff. That all is standard, so thankfully you don't have to pay for blind spot monitoring anymore. But you still do have to pay for adaptive cruise control and this active assist feature set, which gives you like the ability where the vehicle will auto brake for you or intervene if you are changing lanes into somebody, or if you're backing up and see something and needs to hit the brakes for. Those more active safety features are the things that you get with the Prestige package here. And for a vehicle like this, I don't know again how many people really care about all that, but it's all bundled into the Prestige package. So if you want all the top stuff, this top stereo and all those other things, then you're gonna have to get all this extra stuff as well. But you can turn a lot of this stuff off if you don't want to have the lane guidance. But as we're going around this gentle corner here on the highway, I'm gonna test out the lane guidance here, just kind of letting it do most of the steering here. And it's doing very good steering here, keeping us pretty nice and centered, not ping-ponging a whole lot. It works pretty well so far. I think this is some of this newer generation Audi driver assistance stuff, so I think it is a little bit better than past Audi systems, which in the past have been a lot more relaxed and let me go over lines and stuff like that. This so far seems to be doing a better job at that. But again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I don't know how many people actually care about all that stuff in this. It does have, I believe, a new hands-on detection steering wheel you can get, which does delete the flat bottom wheel. I think you can get flat bottom wheels in other versions, but I think once you go for this more active stuff in the Prestige, you do go back to the round wheel, if I'm understanding correctly how it's all set up and packaged. But these tires, you certainly are hearing those maybe a little bit, so a little more road noise than you'll usually have in an S3. But a really nice cruiser, and with these adaptive dampers, again, tries its best to smooth out the ride for you here, whenever you're out on the highway. Yeah, I love the response of this setup now. 2025 is definitely where it's at. This is what you want if you want to have a really nice and responsive powertrain here. You're going to want to definitely go for the 25. So much better. Now, anyway, the last thing to mention here, though, is the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, these are rated at 23 mpg in the city, 31 on the highway, and 26 combined. Now, unfortunately, I don't have enough time this week to do enough driving to get a good fuel economy average myself. But what I can say is that these motors often do overperform on fuel economy and are just so efficient. These Volkswagen Group 4 cylinders are really solid motors and just very, very efficient. So, you might even see better than that. You might see worse. Of course, fuel economy always comes down to a million factors, that are unique to you and your driving situation. But, I think it's a pretty good amount of fuel economy, though. I mean, considering WRXs with all-wheel drive and, less horsepower struggle to get even close to this fuel economy, I think this is actually really good. But the last thing to mention here, though, is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So these start right at $50,000 now, which is about $1,500 more expensive than last year. But I mean, you get that RS3 rear diff, which alone is probably worth $1,500. And again, all these other enhancements and improvements, the nicer ambient lighting and all that here, at least on the top trim. But it's I think $1,500 is not a bad increase for this vehicle. And this one, as tested, though, is going to be $60,840. So Prestige, does get a little more pricey. So, I think it's still a lot of fun for that money, and I think it is pretty well priced. For example, a Mercedes CLA 35, which is going away, and there's going to be a new version. It'll be even more expensive probably. But those are already well and away more expensive than this, so there's some easy wins there. But if you do want to get the best pricing possible for an S3 or for any vehicle, you're definitely going to head over to maranmotoring.com. There you'll click onto the new car quotes page and get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected to a dealer that can show you one of these in person, let you take it for a test drive, and see what you think about the S3. So if you're interested, there's going to be a link in the description, as well as one in a pinned comment to take you straight to that site and get you all that information. But as far as how this does compare to the competition, especially if you are someone who is, a fan of Volkswagen Group stuff, and especially Audis. Again, it's really hard to justify this though over an RS3, because an RS3 equipped basically the same as this. There's different trims. There's really like basically one fully loaded trim and a couple of packages. So it's not the same structure as this, but an RS3, the way I'm building it at least, it's only like $6,000 more expensive than this car. And I mean, I'll just go ahead and say, you know, for an extra like 100 horsepower, the specialness and the more collectability of that turbo 5-cylinder in the RS3, you know, the more aggressive styling, just the car is just more special. This is still very fun, but the RS3 is a truly special car that will go down in history for its epicness. And unfortunately, just it's, you know, this S3 is overshadowed by the epicness of the RS3. And I mean, especially even just depreciation, you'll probably save yourself money in the long run if you're flipping into a new car in the future, just going for the RS3, which I think will hold its value better. And even if it doesn't, I mean, just $6,000 more for that specialness, I just go for the RS3, honestly. I mean, if you're going for a low trim of the S3 and you have a bigger price gap, okay, or if, you know, it's hard to get an RS3 at sticker where you are, and S3s are easier to get for a decent deal, you know, again, there could be some variables there, but speaking on MSRP versus MSRP, just get an RS3 if you're going to go for a loaded up version of an S3, in my opinion. It's also still, you know, a tough sell against the Golf R, which is so much less expensive. Again, gives you ventilated seats, gives you heated rear seats, if you do want those creature comforts. Again, gives you very similar power, very similar handling, same platform, very similar packaging. You know, that is still also one of the struggles here of the S3. It's kind of, it's really unfortunately sandwiched in between two really great cars that are, you know, more appealing in some ways, whether we're talking price or specialness. That I think that's kind of why the S3 kind of falls through the cracks sometimes, unfortunately. But, you know, whenever you compare it, for example, there's like the Mercedes M235i Grand Coupe. I've never driven one of those, so I can't say how that drives, but I believe that's a more cramped interior. And, you know, you get a little less power, I believe, than this now. And, you know, it seems like more people, at least enthusiasts, seem to be more into these than the BMW, just from, you know, what I've seen. So I'd probably take this, even though you can get one of those BMWs for about $2,000 less than this. So a little bit of a value there, again, if you are looking to save a few bucks. But, you know, it's only $2,000, not that big of a difference. But the one other one I do want to mention that is a little bit of a more substantial discount is the Acura Integra Type S. That's another very special car and looks fantastic. You know, the flared out fenders again on that one, and the fact that that gives you a manual transmission, also more rear seat space and an actual usable big hatch. So if you're someone who, again, has been wishing for a hatch S3, you know, maybe Integra could be an option. Now that is, of course, unfortunately only front wheel drive. So, you know, if you live in a place where you need all-wheel drive, or you just want the all-wheel drive for whatever reason, you know, obviously then you're not going to want to go for the Acura. But if you live in a place where snow tires can get you by just fine, and or you're just in a place where you don't see snow, I mean, that's really tough, because those are just under $55,000. Again, you can get one of these cheaper, you know, but I think if you want a comparable thing with, you know, having a really good stereo like you get in the Acura and stuff, you know, you are going to be kind of, again, on a comparable level, coming in about $5,000 or $6,000 more with this. And Integra is a very special, marvelous manual, just so good as far as just that handling. It's really, really well done. And yeah, another very good car. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we are spoiled for choice here. There's so many good choices these days in this segment. If you're willing to spend, you know, $50,000 to $60,000 on something that's small and, you know, turbocharged, there's a lot of really good stuff to pick from. So there's really no wrong answer here. Honestly, these are all very fantastic, very fun cars that I've just mentioned. And I think, you know, it just comes down to what your priorities are and what you want the most. But I think, you know, now having the active rear diff that's, you know, more fun, having, you know, there's little niceties here on the interior, and you know, just again, the much better tuning, I think, for transmission and all that, is really, really nice. So I think this is a really nice upgrade if you're coming out of another S3 and you really enjoy these, or if you are someone who, you know, just maybe wants something, you know, a little bit more refined than a WRX or or something like that, GR Corolla, and you want to spend a little bit more money hopping into one of these, I think this, could be a really great choice as well for those people. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2025 S3. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Audi for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.